All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we are diving headfirst into one of the most ambitious, most mind-bending theories of art ever put to paper, a sweeping story that connects the ancient pyramids of Egypt to the tragedies of Shakespeare. We're talking about Hegel's philosophy of art.
You've probably had this experience. You're in a museum, you're looking at a stunningly perfect Greek statue, and then you walk into the next room and you're faced with a modern, totally abstract piece. And you can't help but wonder, how on earth are both of these things considered art? They just feel like they're from different planets.
Well, it turns out the great 19th century German philosopher G.W.F. Hegel wasn't just asking that same question. He decided to build an answer. And it wasn't just some small answer. He created this grand, unified theory to explain the entire history and the ultimate purpose of art itself.
So let's start there. Why does art even exist? For Hegel, art isn't just about making things look pretty or, copying nature. Nope, he argued that art has one single, incredibly profound and essential purpose.
And that purpose is to create what he called the ideal. Now, this is really the core of his whole philosophy. Art's big job is to be the sensuous expression of free spirit. In other words, its job is to take this huge, abstract idea, human freedom, and make it real for us, something we can actually see or hear or feel.
Okay, so that word spirit, or Geist in German, can sound a little out there, right? But just think of it as humanity's collective consciousness, our shared reason and freedom, all of it evolving and growing over thousands of years. And so art becomes this incredible mirror that we, as humanity, have been building for centuries to look at ourselves, to really understand who we are.
And this idea, man, it was a total break from what the big philosopher before him, Immanuel Kant, was saying. See, Kant basically said beauty is subjective. It's in the eye of the beholder, it's a feeling you get inside your own head. But Hegel comes along and says, nope, you've got it wrong. Beauty is an objective property of the artwork. It isn't just triggering a feeling of freedom in you. The artwork is freedom made physical.
So with this big idea in place, Hegel started looking at the entire history of art, and he saw it not as some random collection of styles, but as one single continuous story, the story of humanity, or spirit, slowly but surely learning how to perfectly express its own freedom.
He broke this grand story down into three major acts, you could say: the symbolic, the classical, and the romantic. And you can really think of it like watching a person learn to talk about themselves. At first, they kind of struggle for the right words. Then they find a moment of perfect clarity. And finally, they start expressing feelings so deep that simple words just aren't enough anymore. Okay, so first up we have symbolic art. This is humanity's early phase, where our understanding of freedom is still kind of vague and abstract. The art is trying to express something huge, but it doesn't quite have the tools yet. It can only point at a hidden meaning. Think about the Egyptian pyramids. They're just massive, mysterious structures that gesture towards the dead pharaoh inside, but they don't actually reveal the spirit itself. But then we get to stage 2, classical art. And this is the moment of perfection. It's when humanity finally finds the perfect balance between the idea of freedom and its physical form. For Hegel, the absolute peak of this was ancient Greek sculpture. The idealized human body became the perfect container for the divine. The spirit wasn't hidden anymore, it was right there, in the marble, for everyone to see. For Hegel, this was it. This was absolute beauty. But of course, the story doesn't end there. With the rise of Christianity, the spirit turns inward. The focus is now on things like inner faith, boundless love, and spirituality, ideas so deep and infinite that no physical form, not even a perfect Greek statue, could possibly contain them. This is romantic art. Think of a painting by Raphael of the Madonna. It's expressing an inner life and a soulfulness that something like cold marble just couldn't capture. The idea had officially become bigger than any physical container.
Okay, so this whole story, this journey from symbolic to classical to romantic, it leads us straight to Hegel's most famous and probably most misunderstood idea, his declaration of the end of art.
He really wrote this. He said, "Art, considered in its highest vocation, is and remains for us a thing of the past." Now that sounds incredibly dramatic, right? Like he's saying, all right, everyone, show's over, art is done. But what he meant was a lot more nuanced than that. So let's be super clear about what he did not mean. He didn't mean that people would stop making art. He wasn't saying modern art is bad or has no value. And he definitely wasn't saying art was pointless now. What he actually meant was that art's job description had changed.
See, back in ancient Greece or medieval Europe, art was absolutely central to how people understood their ultimate truths, how they understood the divine. It served our highest need. But in the modern world, Hegel said, we now turn to other things for those ultimate answers, things like religion itself and philosophy.
So, and this is the really cool part, this wasn't a demotion for art at all. It was more like a liberation. By not having to carry the massive weight of religious truth anymore, art was finally set free. It got a new #1 job.
And what was its new job? To explore what Hegel called humanus. Basically, the full, messy, glorious, tragic, and beautiful experience of being human. Art was now free to dive into every corner of our lives, our joys, our sorrows, our greatest deeds, and our deepest fears. Anything and everything was now on the table.
Which brings us right back to today, and it leaves us with a huge question. If Hegel was right, if the entire history of art is this giant mirror we hold up to see our own freedom, then what does our reflection look like now? What story is the art of the 21st century, from blockbuster movies to viral TikToks to museum installations, telling about us and about our freedom today?